you, Saoirse. Okay, Mayor.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and welcome to our outside guests and welcome everybody here today. It's been nice to get together. Anne-Marie and I talked about it last week that we needed to all get together one more time and so we could look at each other's smiling faces. So here we are. So if you will, please all stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reverend Poole, if you would, please give identification.
Let us bow our heads. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you that we have come together once again. Lord, we thank you for watching over us and keeping us from all hurt, harm, and danger. We thank you for blessing our families, our homes. We thank you, Lord, that you have taken care of us and you're watching over us. And we thank you and we pray that we continue to do the things which is right and lovely for this town and for this country. Lord, we thank you for our meeting. We thank you that we're able to come together one more time in the name of Jesus. Lord, Father, we ask that you will continue to bless us, bless this council, bless the mayor, bless the city manager. Lord, bless each and every one you do about the first one. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Poole. And we will follow our agenda tonight as normal. And at this time, I'll call on Anne-Marie to review the purpose of the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor, and Saoirse, can you hear us okay? Oh, she's muted. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So tonight the council will see our new council members have not seen this before, but in the past, periodically, not as much as Councilman Dixon would like us to,
Yeah, this is great.
we use an agenda tool, and it's called the consent agenda. And that is when we place items which are considered to be routine and non-controversial in matter, in nature. We place those on what's called the consent agenda. And I think Hood is going to give you a quick overview of how to proceed and use the consent agenda. So Hood, thanks for being with us.
Yes, ma'am. Y'all worked a miracle with your technology. I congratulate you. A consent agenda is a tool that you already have in your toolbox. It's Rule 4C in your town rules of procedure. It's just not something that we've used lately. In fact, I'm not sure we've ever used it, but it's a great way of speeding up a meeting when you put items on it that like tonight, most of the items you've already voted on. All we're doing is ratifying them in a meeting where you're all present. To be sure, if for some reason our rules on electronic meetings didn't quite up to snuff, your ratification will take care of making it official action. But again, it's an agenda of non-controversial routine items that you receive in advance so that you can look at them. If you see something on there that you don't like or that you've got a question about, you can ask about it in advance of the meeting to see if that satisfies you. Or again, you can get to the meeting and simply request that it be removed from the consent agenda. If any member asks for an item to be removed, it automatically has to be removed and put on the regular agenda for discussion. To the extent you approve all the items that are on the consent agenda, you can adopt them with one motion that says, I move to approve the consent agenda. Second to that, you vote on it, and it passes, and you can move on to your other items that you might have more discussion about. But again, it's just a tool to speed things up.
Okay. Thank you, Hood. We appreciate that. Is there any item on the consent agenda that anyone would like to remove from that and talk about individually? Okay, that being the case, I'll ask if anybody, somebody would make a motion to approve the
Yeah, I
consent.
would like to do that. I've been trying to do this for 20 years. I move that we approve this consent agenda.
Second, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor Stallings, I did have a question,
Okay.
either to Councilman Dixon or town manager. Are we doing this at this meeting just to ratify things that we've already voted on at the electronic meeting, or is this something that we're going to consider for future meetings?
We will consider for future meetings.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
I hear you, thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is a good time to make good changes, and this seems like a really positive thing, because everything on here we talked about pretty extensively in our
Right.
last meeting. We really have been talking about doing this for, we've had a consent agenda,
We
we've
have,
mostly
yeah, we've had
minutes
it before.
sometimes, but I think this is a great day.
Yeah.
This does save time.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't mean to jump in there and make that motion, but I've been trying to do,
That's it. Well, I'm
to
glad
do a
you-
consent agenda motion for a
for
long
20 years.
time. Well, maybe 24.
Is there any further discussion on this, on the consent agenda?
I think it's a good move.
Okay, motion carried. Emery, would you like to read these, or do we need to?
Hood had suggested that I read each item, and I'll try to do that really quick so we don't, but as Councilman High said, the purpose of this consent agenda is to follow your rules that you adopted for when you meet remotely. And that says that you will ratify the actions that you approved remotely at the next meeting in which you all meet and there's a quorum. And you're well aware that you adopted the policies to allow for a remote meeting. That's item A. Item B was deferring the 2020 vision statement until after the state of emergency. Item C is a resolution encouraging businesses to allow firefighters to respond to calls during working hours. Item D was authorization to begin the sale of town-acquired properties in the North Oakham redevelopment zone. Item E was the approval of the agreement for a maintenance of our town-owned cemeteries. Item F was the adoption of policy for emergency paid sick leave and emergency family and medical leave pertaining to the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act that the federal government passed. Item G is the resolution designating the town's agent in conjunction with FEMA reimbursements related to COVID-19. Item H was approval of a disaster assistance agreement between the town and FEMA pertaining to COVID-19 expenses. Item I was approval of a budget amendment for the maintenance of the cemeteries. Item J is the resolution accepting conditions of the loan and grant for the purchase of the fire department mobile command vehicle and 3 police vehicles. Item K was approval of a budget amendment in the water and sewer fund for the purchase of salt needed for the for the water treatment plant. And then item L was approval of a budget transfer to pay for the purchase of a piece of equipment needed as part of the new water treatment plant.
I think I sort of jumped the gun and asked for a motion before we went through those
That's
items,
okay.
but we're there, so we'll go ahead with that. Okay.
I was so anxious to make the motion.
That's okay. Okay. The next item up is a resolution accepting the conditions of a USDA loan and grant by Renovations for the wastewater treatment plant. We have a Zoom via Dennis Delong with USDA Rural Development. Dennis, thank you for being with us, and before I turn the meeting over to you, I will ask Anne Marie to update us on the project.
I will, and I'm going to ask Corey to join us, so one more, you will still be in compliance with the governor's limitations on meeting size. So, Corey, thanks. Come on in, have a seat.
Hey, Corey. Hey, Corey.
So on the Zoom with us is our good friend, partner, and supporter, Dennis Delong with USDA. Dennis, can you hear us okay? Dennis? He's not muted. He's shown as being here. Okay. So, is he still there, Saoirse?
I just tried putting him in the waiting room and then bringing him back. I'm gonna. Dennis, are you here?
Okay. How about I try to reach him by his cell, but in the meantime, maybe we can ask Rand Williams, he's next up to talk with you about the health insurance. And so Corey, you'd have to slip out and let Tammy come in, because Tammy is our HR coordinator and she's been working with Rand. Hey Rand, on our health insurance. So if you hang out in the lobby, and I'll be with you in 1 minute, we'll try to find Dennis. So thank you, Tammy. Bye.
Hey, Tammy.
Oh, like a high school play.
And Rand is here, so
I am. Can you hear me okay?
we can.
All right.
So, Rand Williams is with the Soaring Group, and the Soaring Group has been our health insurance broker for the last 5 years, Rand? Has it been 4 or 5 years?
I think it might be six.
Six.
But
Okay.
5 or 6.
5 or 6 years. So, and Rand and his team are terrific. They carry the burden of having to solicit and then negotiate with health insurance providers. And so every time this year, Rand comes before the council and gives you an update of the work that he's been doing on your behalf. The town employees' health insurance plan is due to be renewed July
Ms.
1st.
Dyson?
Yes.
I apologize. This is Dennis DeLong.
Hi, Dennis.
This is new for me too, so I do apologize.
That's okay. Are you able to hang on a few minutes? Because we went ahead and started another action item.
That is fine. That's
Okay,
fine.
Great. Okay. We'll be with you shortly. Thank you. So, Rand tonight is here to give you an update on where he is, where we are with the proposals, and we think we're close to having a recommendation for you to consider, but you will not be asked to take action tonight because it's a lot to digest, and you may have some questions that we'll need to research. So this is not an action item for you tonight, it's information, but we will be asking for you to make a decision at your your May 26th special council meeting. So Rand, with that, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Okay, well, let me see if I can share my screen, and I'll be right with everybody.
And I may adjust the lights, Mayor and Council, so you might be able to see better.
Let me know if
Does
that,
that help?
Yes, it does.
can you see the,
We can see it.
okay, great. All right, well, I will dive right in. Good to see everybody. Sounds like y'all are getting all the virtual meetings figured out. So today, much like last year, we want to get all this in front of you, as Anne-Marie said. It's a lot to digest, but ultimately think of anything you would like to see that we're not showing or talking about just as much as questions if you prefer to investigate a different path. But for now, we'll kind of go through the landscape. Unfortunately, we've had a really rough claims year, and it's almost bound to happen because the 3 years before have been so low in claims. It wasn't always that way. But as you see here, the claims in 17, 18, and then also really 18 and 19 was just as good of a year. There were just a couple big claims that got us there. So Cigna was kind of basing your rates on this. Unfortunately, we've spent 673, not 72, through just 10 months. So it certainly does warrant, if we were in Cigna's shoes, we would want an increase. A lot of it's just coming from a handful of larger events. Some of it's some new pharmacy spend, but it's uglier than we've seen in a while. And I know we switched from First Carolina to Cigna, and really the initial release, I told Anne-Marie I didn't want to give her a heart attack because it was 30%, but we've got a great relationship with Cigna based on a lot of things going on right now. They've been generous to work with us, and we've gotten them all the way down to really 12%, but they've also thrown in a one-time bill credit of $7,000 just as a cash flow measure, and ultimately the town can do with that what they choose. It'll just be a credit on your July bill. So we tried to use the realities of COVID-19 and get as much sympathy as we could, and at the same time, First Carolina Care was the only other company that was interested in us. And initially, their offer looked really good at 8%, but if we wanted to give employees credit for the amounts they've had go towards their deductible so far, then it went to 11%. So we had put this presentation together before Cigna came down and thought we were going to recommend First Carolina Care, and they'd love to have you back. But I think as the numbers have gotten closer, and Anne-Marie and I have talked just the realities of this environment, the last thing we want to have to do is switch companies if we can make financial sense out of it. So we'll hopefully be able to do that in a few slides. But looking forward, we think Cigna's offer or First Carolina's is probably underpriced. Trying to get them down as low as we can. We got to hope your claims will improve, or you might consider just budgeting for a double-digit increase next year that we really haven't had in so long. Some of that is a function of the conditions, medications, and just the reality. Everybody's several years older, and we're starting to use the insurance a little more like we did 5 years ago, I think. But fortunately, for now, we can hold our hat on these costs at least being not nearly as ugly of an increase as it could have been. I'm going to show you the alternates now and the financial exhibits. Something to keep in mind is when we show like the town's annualized cost, or it says employer annualized cost, it's making certain assumptions based on what the town would contribute to the, not just employee-only cost, but the cost of dependents. And there's one option where we have two plans, called the dual option slides, will make an assumption the town's paying the same percentage towards dependents as they do today, but not necessarily the same dollar amount. So keeping that in mind, just to refresh everybody, this is your current plan with Cigna. The benefits you see here and where we've ended up with the rates at this 10.97% increase with the $7,000 credit. The key number here is if you wanted to keep employee and dependents cost the same, the total new town cost annualized would be $69,386.36. So that's kind of the number where, if you're able to do that, the employees would be thrilled not to have their co-pays go up, not to have their paychecks go down. And then the next couple slides will show more if we need to find a happy medium. When it comes to First Carolina, this was attractive before Cigna came down, but now you can see that for a comparable plan, they're not saving us any money because of that deductible credit where they had to go up on the rates. There's a few little differences, but not many. When we're trying to think about how can we achieve, the best experience for the employee, the lowest cost for the town, we've probably touched on these before, something called an HRA, a health reimbursement account. And with First Carolina Care, it's really attractive. Basically, you have a $1,000 deductible now. If your new plan had a $3,500 deductible, once the member had spent $1,000, the town would pay the last $2,500 of that deductible. And so ultimately, their out-of-pocket and their financial protection wouldn't change more than $100. With this First Carolina example, the co-pays went up a little bit, but early on, when we thought we were going to be looking at First Carolina Care, this actually priced really well because you can see how low their rates are. And we might estimate you'll spend $40,000 in those reimbursements in a year. And so this would be kind of the catastrophic if we have to lower our costs and we're willing to change carriers and deal with a lot of things that go with that. That's probably the best way to keep your employees whole and benefits and for the town to spend the least. But there are a lot of other variables. When we did this HRA with Cigna, it just didn't price that well. We're kind of doing a similar thing with the deductible here. We're not generating as much savings, and since you have to spend some on the deductible reimbursements, there's savings compared to the 69 figure I showed on the slide before, but it's not a ton. And, it could be more if you spent less than 40, or if you spent more, it could be not worthwhile. So we kind of got to a point where I wouldn't necessarily say the HRA with Cigna is worth the trouble for projected $12,000 of town savings. What's worth noting is you do only have 7 people making up the majority of your claims, and on average, over the last 3 years, you've only had 12 people a year hit these deductibles. So your exposure should be in that 40 range or less. If you had a whole department be diagnosed with COVID, then it would be a different story, another reason why it's not worth the risk. But you would just be self-insuring those smaller dollars and ultimately getting the premium down. I don't want to talk about that much more unless you are really interested in changing to First Carolina where it might be more applicable. So going on to the next potential idea, let's say employees were very committed, we're going to pay 100% of the cost. You could offer a dual option plan here with First Carolina. This would be the same plan you have today, and employees could have that plan at no cost to them. When it came to these people covering family members, you would pay the same percentage as you do before, but their high plan, to keep the plan they have now, their costs would go up a little bit. But since people are struggling financially, and a lot of people are healthy and not using the insurance, you would have this low plan here with a higher deductible and out-of-pocket, slightly higher copays, but still really good copays. And at that point, they could elect that plan, and it would cost them a good bit less than what they're spending right now. So you might make a few people happy, and they may just need to do it out of necessity with their budgets, but you wouldn't be taking away anybody's ability to have this plan, and it might just cost a little more only for those covering family members. And what that does, it achieves a little chunk of savings for the town versus just saying you're going to pay less and only offer one plan, or take the plan you have and really cut back the benefits. So we're maybe trying to find the path of least resistance there. So you can see the employee costs right now, and with the renewal or First Carolina, those first matching your current plan options, assuming the employee's cost does not change and y'all absorb the increase. With that HRA strategy, I'm not interested, don't think this is a good one anymore. First Carolina, it's the, catastrophic solution if you have to. But then when it comes to the dual option, employee only still the same on this high plan, but you would see anybody covering a spouse go to from $199.50 per paycheck to $221. If that was unattractive to them, they could elect the low option, and it would be $169, not only a good bit lower than this, but also lower than what they're currently seeing. So they could have some more money back in their paycheck if they're okay with that higher deductible plan. So these are kind of ideas, but we want to make sure we're on the right track and relative to what y'all's goals are, knowing the financials behind it, because we've gotten everybody to their bottom. I think we are still strongly recommending that we stay with Cigna. There's a lot of variables with carrier changes, and no matter who the carrier is or where we go, things happen and people get frustrated. But since we went through that already last year or in July, we had to do the deductible credit thing with Cigna, and it didn't go that smoothly because there can be such a lag in claims and getting those over to Cigna, and the employee being told they owe money to a hospital. And I think there were a couple issues with Cigna, with pharmacy being the main one, where Cigna doesn't cover a few drugs that First Carolina did. Most of those were over-the-counter medications, so they weren't, I don't want to say they're cheap, because some things are $30, $40 over the counter. But other than that, it's a pain to change insurance companies because you got to redo all your pharmacy. And First Carolina also doesn't have a Virginia. They don't have a network out of state at all. And we have some people going to Virginia that were happy about the Cigna change, and they can also go other places nationwide, which we pulled a report for all your out-of-state claims in the last 10 months. And so you can see different, not just Virginia, but you have a few sprinkled throughout, and ultimately those dollars were at least paid in network, and a lot of those dollars were covered by the plan that wouldn't with First Carolina. So for us, we'd love to minimize the impact with your people and stay with Cigna. We'd like to ask for your feedback on whether we're on the right track and kind of some dialogue around 2 plans versus 1, or whether we should show you another single option where we just have to tweak the benefits a little bit. So I think I'll open up just for any questions or discussion at this point.
Do both Cigna and First Carolina Care offer wellness programs?
They do. Cigna's is a little more robust, and we actually haven't taken advantage of it as much yet. But they've invested a lot in that area. And First Carolina being a smaller company, they're they'd rather you go find a third party and invest in somebody who's doing it 24/7. So from that standpoint, Cigna is stronger.
Mayor, can I ask Tammy just to share a couple observations of some strengths that you talked to me about with Cigna and what they're doing, especially now during COVID?
One thing that they have ramped up is their EAP program for the employees and their dependents, where you could have more visits with mental health, because as we all know, this is taking a toll on everybody. So they really ramped up that for everybody, where you can have more visits. Telehealth has been a really big thing during this whole crisis. Everybody's ramped that up. And I noticed that First Carolina has offered that, but they're saying that's only during this COVID crisis. So we're thinking that's probably going to go away after that. And our employees were really excited when we went with Cigna that was going to be an option now. So even before COVID, they were taking advantage of
most of our employees seem to be happy where we're at.
Yes. Once we got over the few, bumps in the road at the beginning, with, the deductibles, having to get those credits and the pharmacy, but we worked through that, so I think we're at a good place now with them.
So Mayor, if the council would like, we'll go ahead, because we're working on our budget. I know you're concerned about the increase, but have some opportunities for savings in other areas. And so we'll plug in our numbers and hopefully, definitely by your May 26th meeting, you'll see where we're at with our recommendation for the budget. But I feel like we're going to be able to manage this increase, and it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to ask, for employees to help us find savings in other operational areas. But as Tammy said, this extraordinary time with COVID changing, and also, an option is always, well, do you want the employees to cost share in the premium? And I just think that sends the wrong message at this particular time, that the employees have been fantastic, frontline, working, trying to carry out their important responsibilities, and then, this year of all years to look at having them pay for a share. That makes me cringe, and that would be the last thing I would want to recommend to you at this point.
Rand, if you don't mind, would you tell me again what the $7,000 credit was for?
So basically, the underwriting people, when we negotiate on your actual rates, they get to a point where they're not comfortable going any lower. They'd be worried about, getting reprimanded because it's in their file. It has to be justified by the risk. But because of what's going on with COVID, and just think everybody can probably agree, for the short term, insurance companies have seen claims go down, and they're probably going to stay down for some amount of time. So they've got some extra dollars to maybe help not lower your rate, but give out as a credit against your bill that doesn't have anything to do with your rates. They call it a retention credit. So it's money to you, and it's not tied to your rates. It's just a one-time thing.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions of Rand?
Okay, so we'll fine-tune everything and be prepared, Rand, to Zoom with us on May 26th and make a final recommendation. But it looks like you all feel comfortable, as long as budget-wise it works, with us staying with Cigna. And okay.
Rand, thank you very much for your time and effort as you put in it, and for all the help you've given us. We really appreciate that. And we'll look forward to seeing you again on May the 26th.
That sounds great. Well, it was good to see everybody else, and y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rand.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll go into our committee meetings. And
Did you want to go to
One that you skipped,
Skip?
is there?
you know, the first one that we had that we skipped?
Wastewater, the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
So Mayor, Corey will join us. Welcome back, Corey. And also we have on Zoom via phone Dennis Delong. And as I said earlier, Dennis has been a great partner and a great supporter of the town of Edenton. He is with USDA Rural Development in Raleigh and has been working really hard trying to get this package finalized and presented to you. And as you know, the town has been working with our engineers, with the Wooten Company, for the last several years on the plans to upgrade and then expand our wastewater treatment plant. and we are under an agreement with the state. We're actually under a special order of consent that we entered into back in 2017. You recall that at that time, an analysis was done, and about 3 things happened all at once, which is normally the case with us. Our permit that had been renewed to operate the plant in 2014, unbeknownst to us, the amount of acreage that we could use to apply the treated wastewater was dramatically reduced due to a change in buffering requirements. And so we lost almost 22% of our area that we could spray. And then right around that time, historically, just really dramatic increases in rainfall throughout North Carolina, throughout the eastern part of the country. And you all saw the graphs where, for many, many years, we averaged around 30 to 30 inches of annual rainfall. And around 2014, 15, the numbers started creeping up, and now we're at anywhere from 40 to 50, even up as high as 56 inches of rain. And so that is puts an enormous amount of stress on the soils that are needed to help treat the lands at the wastewater treatment plant. And then third, our aging infrastructure, our collection system in town, aging with all the rainwater and groundwater, that caused stress on the system. And so it was identified that we need to do that major infill and inflow project, which is ongoing now. We got $1 million zero interest loan, and the contractors are in town replacing pipes in certain areas and then also cleaning and relining. So we have attacked it, from a kind of a 3-pronged approach. First was the I&I work, and then simultaneously look at what could we do at the existing wastewater treatment plant to improve and regain some of the capacity that we've lost. And then third, look at expanding the plant, actually purchasing land and expanding the plant. So we're at the point tonight where USDA has reviewed the engineering reports that the Wooten Company has submitted, and those reports have been approved. USDA is satisfied, and they're here tonight to offer the town a loan as well as some grant funds. And we're thrilled with the offer, and I'll let Dennis speak to the terms and the conditions, and also talk to you about why we're asking you to take action tonight, because it's very unusual for you to have an agenda item of this magnitude and vote on it tonight, but there's compelling reasons for that. So, Mayor, I'll introduce Dennis and ask him to present. Okay, Dennis, thanks for being with us. And
can you hear me okay?
We can, so the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, and I apologize for my technical difficulties. I've done a few of these Zooms and everything worked out. For some reason, I couldn't get my audio to work. I appreciate Mayor Stallings, the councilman, and Anne Marie has been great to work with. Try to get on your agenda. I know it's a very short notice. I totally realize that. Just briefly, we have a greater number of applications on hand and in the works than we've had for the last several years, and the fact that we are all working. Well, everyone in our state and all our offices are teleworking except for myself. I'm the only person that's working in an office in our state office in Raleigh. That's been a challenge, but we're going to overcome it. But the reason, and I want to cover the letter of conditions, just briefly, I'm not sure if you provided a copy. I did make a couple errors. Usually it's not my job, I'll be honest, to prepare these documents. I've been doing this for 36 years, and water and waste I've been doing for probably 32 years. But I'm a financial, I'm a reviewer and an underwriter, that type of thing. So I did make a couple of minor errors in the document, and I'll go over those as we go along. But why it's important, and Anne Marie mentioned that, is that we have what we call mid-year pooling, and that is this Friday at midnight. And what happens, all the states receive an allocation, a loan and grant, just like we did, and they call it mid-year pooling. And what happens on Friday evening at midnight, what you haven't used, the national office will pull back from you. And we are such that we will retain a small amount of funds, and we're only going to retain approximately $500,000 worth of grant. Highly unusual. Like I said, this is we have more. It's a good thing for us. We have more applications in hand and more need than we've had in the last several years. But I'm not trying to put pressure. I'm just going to try to say it. I'm been accused of being rather blunt, but I'd rather tell the truth. I don't want to paint you a rosy story one way or the other. Just give you the facts. So what will happen is whatever we do not use, we'll lose a portion of that. And the worst thing that any state can ever do is lose grant funds. Well, we would lose some grant funds. And the problem with that is what we have left is very minor. We do have other applications in the wings. We fund projects on a first-come, first basis as they're presented and as we can get them approved and underwritten. And that's why Edenton's, you're not alone. We are funding like 7 projects this week. So it's crunch time for us. But what we're afraid of is once the funds go back to the national office, they have a very stricter criteria of getting, not loan funds, but getting those grant funds back. Even though and I've claimed it before, well, those belong to the state, we deserve them back. Their take is, well, if you should have used them. Now they belong to the whole country and every state goes after them. So we would just have to compete with every state. And the only concern I have, because this has happened in the past, and it's happened to us in North Carolina in the past, on the grant that we're proposing here and offering, $1,988,000, I mean, if we have to go back to the national office, and we would send it like it is for that same loan amount, same grant amount, same term, same everything. However, they may come back and say, well, due to the need across the country and looking at where funds are going and states and such, they may say, well, we're going to give you $1.5 million in grant. So I might not be able to make the same offer. And that I can't guarantee that one way or the other. Sometimes you're fortunate you get what you ask for. Other times you get, it's at their discretion, and they'll say, well, we think, based on the need we have and what we're sitting on across the country, we're going to reduce that. And I'm just putting that out there. Again, I have no way to guarantee that one way or the other. If that would happen, it has happened, or if we get the full amount, and that's happened. But to proceed on, I'm just going to hit the highlights of the letter of conditions. And the town, I know that Anne Marie and probably some of the town members are familiar with the process, because we actually have a water project ongoing. It's under construction, I think, is nearing the end, if I'm not mistaken. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because all of a sudden the video went away. But what this does is the letter conditions, for those who are not familiar with our program, it's the conditions that set out that the town will accept to meet to obtain the loan and grant. Basically, in this letter, it says it's not representative of grant approval or availability of funds. The thing is, the funds are available, and we're proposing a loan in the amount of $4,006,000 and a grant in $1,988,000 for a total proposed project cost of $5,994,000. The interest rate at this time is 1.375%. I think in the history of the program, it dropped once to one and a quarter for a period. And our rates are subject to change every quarter. So they will change again July 1st. So these are set until June 30. But 1.375%. And the conditions we put in, if they're not met within 36 months, which we're assuming, and we extend them often, they're trying to look ahead to how long it may take for the engineer to go ahead and design the project, permit the project, get approvals from us and the state permitting agencies, and then bid the project and construct it. 36 months. However, if for whatever reason the town cannot meet that, we're going to extend the letter of conditions. But that's the number that we put in there for this project. And on page 2, and I'm not sure if everybody has a copy, but again, I'll read through some of this. The proposed budget, the proposed costs that are there came directly out of the approved preliminary engineering report that your engineer, Wooten Company, put together and was accepted. Everything we do, the repayment schedule is on a period of 40 years. Every payment, any bond payments, as you probably know, come due June 1st of every year. So, and I will say about the interest rate, I'll just go back to that. And it says you can take the lower the interest rate at the time of approval and effective time loan closing. I'm not sure why anybody wouldn't want to take the lowest interest rate, but it's a requirement that we state that. But let's just say that, you accept that, we obligate the funds, which means we're putting the funds aside in the town's name. And the project 3 years from now is completed, and say the interest rate goes up, and say then it's up to 2.5%. Well, you're locked in. The town's locked in at that 1.375%. However, let's just say for whatever reason, 3 years from now, the interest rate goes down to 1.25%. Then you would get the 1.25% interest rate for the loan amount. So whatever's in effect at the time we obligate the funds, set them aside, or whenever we close the loan, you'll get the lower. So you're locked in at a maximum rate of 1.375. Again, everything we do is on a 40-year basis. Our security is a water and sewer revenue bond, and there is an error I just noticed. It says sewer and sewer revenue bond, and I will send a correction. If you want to mark that, that should say a $4,006,000 water and sewer revenue bond. People ask, well, why? This is only for sewer. Why are you doing water? Actually, this is a recommendation of the Local Government Commission, State Treasurer's Office, that we take it for both entities because we know the sewer is built off of the water usage and the way the audits are put together. We do draft the payments to make it simple for the borrower, for yourselves, and for the federal government. Pre-authorized debit, those will be drawn right out of your account on June 1st. Interim financing is required. We work with the Local Government Commission to sell the interim financing. You'll have to have interim construction financing. They'll sell that at whatever interest rate they can get at the time, and we have built what we feel is more than sufficient funds to cover the interest, during construction. A construction account will have to be set up. That's normal. The funds are dispersed. The interim construction financing or the loan proceeds of that are the first funds spent, and then we move into our grant funds and disperse those. And there is a debt service reserve requirement. Of course, you have that on your existing project on that loan. All of our loans anymore, anything that's financed with a bond. And how that works is for the first 10 years, you'll have to put whatever the average annual payment is on the loan when we close it. Each year, you'll have to put in 10% of that until after 10 years, you'll build out one annual installment. And the reason for that is there's a couple reasons. One is for the government's benefit, but mainly your benefit. Let's just say that, hurricanes strike, for whatever reason, we understand, if power goes out, people could be without water sewer services for days upon days, or the flooding or whatever. And if the town was running short on funds in that reserve accounts there, you can be allowed to take money out of that to make your payment. You can be allowed, if you had an emergency on a pump station fail, to take, if the town just did not have the funds available, to make that repair on that pump station. So there's a benefit not just to have it sitting there, and then after 40 years or whatever you pay it off. Most people do not keep our loans for 40 years, to be honest. Then that money is there for the town to do whatever it wants to with. We do not take it back. Doesn't specifically have to be used for the sewer project or the sewer or water system, but we would think that that would probably happen. Couple other highlights. There is a mention of a short-lived asset reserve. It says in addition to that, and there is in the schedule, there's a short-lived asset schedule where we replace those things that are not long-term that usually you finance for, whether it's just replacing a pump or valves or meters or repainting, tanks or the plant or whatever, pieces of equipment, that you set up a reserve for short-lived assets doesn't need the long-term financing. It's a suggestion, and we look at that as build that into part of that 10% reserve for the first 10 years. So it's not a separate account that you'll have to set up reserve. We do not monitor that like we do the debt service reserve. The town will have to adopt and pass the loan resolution, and there's those, I'll go over those real briefly, the grant agreement. And prior to the start of construction, the town will have to put in writing that they do have 2,042 users on their sewer system. I do believe that's a correct number, but my system went down this afternoon, and I can't vouch for that. But whatever that number is, I think it's correct. If it is different, then we will change that. They'll have to, just like you do, you pass an operating budget and a rate schedule that's going to be able to repay the loan and your O&M and any reserve account. Now, you get down to environmental requirements and mitigation measures. There are none specifically, however, the minor things that we consider. I mean, it's not like you have other things we need, but those, the things that even deal with traffic control, sedimentation, erosion control, those are the things we're mentioning. There's nothing specific in the environmental that you have to mitigate, like you can't go a certain area due to species or endangered species or animals, but it's those minor things that are written into but those are standard in anything, like I say, traffic control, sedimentation, that type of thing. The project will have to be formally bid. That's a requirement. We do have the American Iron and Steel. That's mandatory on any type of federal funding, whether it's us or any other agency. Again, like I said, you will be required to advertise for bids. Property rights, the town will just have to show wherever they're doing work at the plant. If work is at the plant, then they just have to show that you have ownership of that plant. You have a right to go on their property, and it's really a protection for you, the contractor, and the engineer, to make sure that you have that right. We do expect all projects to be completed within 3 years, and I've stated that up front, the 36 months. Some of these other forms, the drug-free workplace, debt collection, the equal opportunity insurance agreement, a lot of those, and they're still in here, but those were done during the application stage when the mayor signed the electronic application. A lot of those are already covered. Of course, if there's excess funds, if anything related directly to the project, we can allow you to use. If not, then they would go on an extra payment. Of course, the town has to carry insurance and bonding just like anybody else. At the end, after it's done, within 12 months, we'll ask you to complete a vulnerability assessment or emergency response if you have not already done that. Have to maintain your DUNS number, and I'm sure that Anne Marie is very familiar with that. Have to provide the audit, just like you do with LGC. You have to provide the audit to us. And there's a graduation requirement, which we're required to tell you about but at any time you feel you can go out and refinance a project at better rates and terms. I laugh at that because if you can go out and get a better interest rate, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, lower than 1.375, I hope you can find it. But that's just it in a nutshell. Now, I will say, on top of the little dire warning I said about the funding, also, if you sign these documents and they're sent back to me and I obligate the funds, which means I'm going to set those funds aside in the town's name, there is no commitment on the town's part except to move forward with the project. But let's just say, for whatever reason, a year from now, or anything can happen. It very rarely happens, but it has happened over my 36 years a couple of times where things just change in the town. We've had a few where they've lost a big company, lost a big employer, and some of these small towns only have 5, 6, 100 people, and they lost a big employer that employed, used 60 or 70% of their water and sewer, and they couldn't move forward, and they just asked to withdraw their application. There was no penalty. They just redo it. Now, the only thing you're going to be responsible for is any fees that the engineers incurred to that date, whether it's for preparing the preliminary engineering report, environmental, and if they're in design. But you would owe the U.S. government, you'd owe us nothing. You could withdraw at any time. And we'd say, well, thank you, and we'll move on to the next project. So I don't want the town to feel, just because if you sign this tonight, you sign the obligated document, you sign the loan resolution, grant agreement, letter of intent, what you're saying is you intend to meet these conditions, and you'll intend to do this within the next 3 years. But there is no commitment until you sell the interim financing. Until you go to construction, there's no commitment until you sell the interim financing. Then, of course, that will be with a private sum lender that, other than us, we're just going to come in and take out the permanent financing. But there's no commitment to the federal government until that time and until it closes. So, I would like to think the town will go ahead and move forward and accept it. I know it's short notice. I understand that. We'd like to have this done, a month ago, 2 months ago, but it's just timing. So, if you wait, I can go through the various documents, but they're sort of standard. Just the loan resolution will be in the amount of $4,006,000. A grant agreement showing that the grant's going to be $1,988,000. Yeah, the request, the 1940-1 is a request for obligation, which is that's the document that the mayor will sign, or whoever's has that authority, has been assigned that authority, for the amount, the loan and grant amount of 1.375, and that will be signed by our state director, and that will be done tomorrow electronically, and I would obligate the funds in the morning at some point in time. There's a letter of intent, which means you're going to sign and you have intent to meet these. Now, there is an error there, and you're more than happy to, on this form, I can't correct it at this point, but it says not later than 5/12 of 2022. That needs to be 2023, the 3 years I spoke about. I mean, if whoever signs that and wants to initial that, that's fine. And then there's just a resolution that we asked the town to sign that again, it almost may seem redundant because you're going to have your own resolution. We ask you to adopt that. Basically, where you're signing and agreeing to the letter conditions, the letter of intent, the request for obligation of funds, the loan resolution, and the grant agreement. That is it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have. No matter what the question is, I'd be happy to answer. What I would like to add, we obviously would like the town to adopt, this and agree to the funding this evening. Again, it's up to the town. you know, I know sometimes some would like to wait, like to look at everything. All I can say is what I said up front, we will always try to go for the same offer. I just can't guarantee I can get it back. Again, though, even if you sign these, the only commitment you are is, yes, we've accepted your offer. We plan to move forward, but, you know, 8 months, 9 months, 18 months from now, the town decides, or the governing body, the town board decides for whatever reason. I think it'd be difficult, because like Anne Marie says, you're under a special order consent. You're going to have to make some improvements. You know, one way or the other, the town's going to be required. But again, the town can withdraw this application anytime, and there's no penalty to the town.
Amber, do you or Corey either one have anything to add to his presentation? Thank you, Dennis.
I apologize. It's hard for me to hear on your end, you know, on this end of any.
Well, thank you, Dennis, for your comprehensive presentation. We really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions for Dennis?
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. Amber, you act like you had something to say.
No, sir. I would just say that we will schedule sooner rather than later a time for the Wooten Company to come, hopefully in person if we can get beyond this. But you know, to update you on where they are in the process of design and development. So.
Okay.
But we need to move forward. I think this is a fantastic offer. One of my USDA partners kind of hinted that we were going to get a really good offer, and I was waiting and just was so excited when Dennis called late last week and said we can make this work. So appreciate his support and recommend that you all move forward tonight.
Okay. And at this time, I'll ask for a motion to accept the resolution.
I move we adopt the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify.
Mayor, do you want to ask if anybody has any discussion on the
Okay.
motion?
I thought I did, but anyway, yeah. Anybody else got anything to add to it or discuss it or whatever? Okay. All right, all those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried.
Great deal. Great deal.
Great. All right, Dennis, we'll get the mayor signing all these papers in the morning, and we'll send you an electronic copy, and then we'll box up the originals and ship them overnight to your attention. Thank you so much for helping us.
I appreciate the town allowing me to speak this evening and make the offer. I think it's a good offer, but I'm a little biased. But again, I thank you, and Anne-Marie, I'll wait to receive the documents in the morning, and then those will be obligated, and I have to wait 6 days. It's a requirement, but after 6 days after tomorrow, then you'll receive the official forms back and the official notice.
Great. Thank you, Dennis.
Again, thank you, Dennis, very much. We certainly appreciate the offer. Okay,
Thank
now
you.
we will move on to our committee reports, and first up is the Public Works, and that's chaired by Councilman Miller.
Mayor, we have 4 business items needing action tonight. The first being, it's recommended the council approve stormwater inventory assessment plan phase 1. At this time, I'd like to move that we approve phase 1 of the stormwater inventory and assessment plan.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Number 2, Mayor, it's recommended the council approve request for the no parking zone on the north side of 105 West Church Street. At this time, I make a motion that we approve the request for the no parking zone on the north side, 105 West Church Street.
We have a motion, need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do want to say they were out there measuring it today.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Number 3, Mayor, it's recommended council approve requests for the Slow Children at Play sign at the 100 block of East Freemason Street. At this time, I make a motion that we approve that sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those,
I do have a question. Is that going to be 2 signs, Corey? One going east, one going west?
And
It-
we have one in, and we're getting the second one in. But
Is that going to be closer to the Griffith Park? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The last item, Mayor, it's recommended that council approve resolution authorizing submittal of grant application for the North Carolina Department of Transportation's Accelerated Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Program. This time I make a motion that we approve that resolution.
We have a motion and a second. All those, any discussion?
I got a question that I would like to ask.
Okay.
Have you figured out a route or where you want to put this at, or you just seeking funds for a grant? And that's coming later.
I think we're seeking funds for a planning grant that brings a planner here to work with a local task force to address pedestrian and bicycle improvements in the town. So there'll be a local task force. Department of Transportation provides a consultant knowledgeable about these types of activities, and we have the historical background with our town manager and our town planner. So I think they all come together to create what we will do. So there's no set plan yet on what we will do.
So we're not looking at changing 4-lane drive, Broad Street to a 2-lane drive?
No.
And about right, something like that? We're not looking at that right?
Well,
That's going to be up to the task force.
the project, I think you're referring to when we looked at Broad Street
Road diet.
Road Diet.
Yeah.
This grant would not be able to study that. I mean, this grant is going to look at our existing pedestrian plans, sidewalk plans, open space plans, greenway plans, and then try to identify opportunities where we could move quickly and create bike lanes. Road Diet is going to require a whole separate planning initiative. For instance, on Old Hertford, on Church Street Extended, the Cotton Gin Inn, we had at one of our workshops recently, the owner said, would there be an opportunity for a bike lane on East Church Street that would connect the inn, Old Hertford Road, to the downtown? Is that something that could work without a lot of infrastructure improvements? That's a real possibility. You remember the consultant who did our workshop for economic prosperity, he talked about bike lanes galore, and he sees some opportunities around the Hampton Inn. When you have visitors staying at the Hampton Inn, how can you accommodate and get them on bicycles to be able to get to your downtown? We have residents who live out on
Village Creek.
in different subdivisions in the community who want to be able to ride safely to town. The school, how can we help promote, safe bicycle routes for the kids who want to ride their bikes to the high school? So I think those are the kind of things that
Very practical.
we're looking at.
Does DOT, one other question, does DOT have a measurement width for bike lanes from the curb to the, pretty standard, 3 feet, 5 feet? Well,
I don't know the exact number. I think
Okay.
it's based on lane size,
okay.
or lane count.
But they would be a part, if we get funded, DOT would be a part of our task force
Gotcha.
and help us.
I want to say something about this. We haven't been long, I don't even say we got rid of it, but it's gone, thank goodness. Mopeds riding everywhere, on the sidewalk and through yards and everything. But street are for bicycles. The law says that bicycle riders should ride facing the traffic. I haven't seen that many people, civilians from Edenton, riding bicycles. And those that do ride bicycles don't follow the law. Because I remember a couple of years ago, the police and the city bought helmets and made a law that they wear helmets. I haven't seen a helmet on nobody yet. But they still ride bicycles. Now, according to the one paper that I wrote, they're concerned about bicycles and pedestrians out on Route 32. And that area out there, instead of spending money on bicycle routes and all that, there's enough traffic out there to put up lights. The other city has, the people can mash your button and cross the street. Every year, we got clubs, bicycle clubs, that come through Edenton, come in Edenton, and they go through Edenton. They come in 10, 12 at a time, but they're dressed appropriately. They have light coats on, they have helmets on, and they're respected by the law. Because if they ride 10 miles an hour, if you come up 45 miles an hour, then you got to slow down. You got to slow down. People in Easton don't slow down for nobody. So if you're on a bicycle just riding, decide to ride across the street or something like that, it's dangerous. So I haven't seen the streets wide enough for people to drive down and then turn around and make a lane for bicycles. We got the city done already, or the state one, already made it the sidewalk accessible for handicapped people to go down and go back up. What else is needed? I don't understand it. I like to hear somebody explain it to me. Why are we spending money for bicycles? They already got a right to drive or ride in the street by law.
Does the law say that bicycles ride facing traffic, or is that just for pedestrians?
I'm not sure about in town, but I think on the highway.
Yeah.
On the highway, yes, on the highway,
Okay.
against the traffic.
But it's my understanding, this is just an application, we got some grant money that they're gonna look and see if there are places that can make it safe. That's what it seemed like to me when I read it. And I just hope DOT does a better job of this than they did of the road dot with corrected turn arrows and things that like they will drop down from an alien planet. They might have been good in, Detroit or somewhere, but it just didn't work in our little town. So I'm hopeful that they don't just apply their standards that they have, I don't know, in Asheville or somewhere to Eden. I think it needs to be designed in a way that is, and will they take in potential future places that you could have bike routes, or just what we have platted?
For example, railroad, old railroad tracks,
Yeah.
that could be
Correct,
utilized.
yeah.
Elizabeth,
Well,
can I ask Elizabeth to respond? Because she's been studying. Elizabeth, our Director of Planning, is on Zoom with us, and she's been working with Councilman Coleman on studying the grant application. So, Elizabeth, can you help us with, will this grant fund brand new ideas, or is it going to look at kind of existing opportunities?
think the purpose is to cull through our several plans that we already have and identify projects that would be easily doable in a short time period with a small budget. So that's my understanding is what we're applying for. Not necessarily, we have a pedestrian plan, we have a greenway and bicycle plan. Not enough has changed that those would need to be updated. So, in fact, I am pretty sure that within our greenway plan, we have a proposal for a railway bed to be made into a trail.
Yeah.
But, that's an example of maybe that'll come back up when they look through all of our existing plans is why haven't you guys acted on it, or at least a phased approach to it that you could start. But no, it shouldn't be new, most likely not new projects.
So right now, you're going to start small, phase 1,
Yes.
with existing.
I think,
Can I
did you
say
say
something?
start small?
Yes.
Is DOD going to draw up the plan, or is the city, town engineers going to draw up the plan, how this is money is supposed to be spent, and how it's supposed to be installed, put it that way.
The grant will help fund a consultant or an engineer, a planning consultant, transportation planning consultant, who will work with a task force that you all will appoint to come up with plans, cost estimates.
Gotcha.
And
How many are you looking at, the size of this task force? How many? 7 or 8 people?
I think when we did our pedestrian plan, we had about 7 or 8 citizens, Elizabeth, on that task force.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Friday afternoon, I was in my yard cutting grass, doing some yard work. Kids riding bicycles on Old Hereford Road. 2 18-wheelers coming in different directions with a 12-row tractor trying to get down the road at the same time. Kids, you got to go in the ditch. Because it's barely enough room for those 18-wheelers to pass each other on the highway. And then you put a tractor behind them, and then you got cars running towards the ditch just to let this stuff pass by. So I'm saying that so when somebody said Hereford Road, there will have to be extensive work, a whole lot of money spent to make that road wide enough with curbing and sidewalks for kids, for anybody. Because when I ride a bike, I get out at 5:30 in the morning, ain't no traffic. I make sure I'm back home by 6. I'm serious. Yeah, hey, that's the best time riding a bike.
I had you turned over my second nap at that time.
See, I'm a farm boy. I'm up at 5:30. But have to be a whole lot of extensive work done when somebody say communities like Hereford Road and stuff like that. So that's why I was asking you, because I knew one time y'all were talking about Broad Street. And I know we need 4-lane drives down there, but okay, I'm through.
Any further discussion? Anybody? Okay. All right, then we need a motion.
We already made a motion, we got a second. We just need a vote.
Okay, we got a second?
Yeah, they got a second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that does it for Public Works, and the next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon.
So we have 3 things on tonight. The first is recommended that the council approve the agreement for the auditing services with Thompson, Price, Scott, Adams, and Company for 2019-2020 that we saw the presentation. And I'll just put that in form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Gonna miss,
Donna?
Donna, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Second thing, we have a motion to approve the budget amendment for the replacement of carpet in the municipal building. I'll put that in form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the third thing, it's recommended that the council approve the one NC fund grant agreement and performance agreement for Nebraska Plastics, as we talked about, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That wraps up the finance committee.
All right. Thank you. All right, and the next is new business, and I'll call on Anne Marie, if she will, to bring that to us.
Yes, Mayor. We received notice late last week from the consultant who is working on the regional hazard mitigation plan, the update of the plan. This project is required by the State of North Carolina Department of Public Safety as well as FEMA. In order for towns and local governments to be eligible to receive reimbursement from FEMA after a natural disaster or after a disaster like we're dealing with COVID, the municipalities have to have an approved hazard mitigation plan. And it really is a great exercise. It's a good plan. Elizabeth Bryan, our planner, is the staff person who's been working with the consultants on the plan. It's a regional plan, so it includes, I forget how many counties, but it's called the Albemarle Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And I've attended a few of the meetings. Elizabeth's been the spearhead, and then also Cord Palmer, our Chowan County Emergency Management Coordinator. He's really the point person for the plan. But this past week, we learned that the plan has to be adopted. I think it has the same darn deadline as USDA, like by May 15th or at sometime within, very, very soon. And if it's not adopted, we risk not getting funded for our Hurricane Dorian reimbursements as well as whatever we might obtain through the COVID-19 projects that you approved. So we sent you a copy of the link of the plan. We were able to add a lot of work that the town did after Hurricane Matthew. Remember, we got a special grant and did a resiliency plan. And so we were able to include a lot of that information and update the plan from Edenton's perspective. Again, I hate that, we don't have the consultant here with a presentation for you, but given the virus and given the deadline, we're asking for you to please approve the plan. Elizabeth and I will be happy to try to answer questions. We can schedule a summary for you at an upcoming meeting, but really ask for your consideration in moving to adopt the resolution that's before you tonight.
Well, when you said the money that we get back from the various hurricanes and all we had, I think that's enough said. Could we get a motion?
So moved.
So moved. A second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I keep forgetting to say that. But any further discussion?
You learn.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Want me to keep going, Mayor?
Please. Yes,
Okay.
please.
So next on the
You got a bunch
agenda
of them.
is a budget amendment, and our electric director, Mike Nichols, We've been searching and looking for an appropriate vehicle for him. We want to go ahead and get that purchased before the fiscal year ends. Virginia had identified some funding in the electric department, some unspent capital, and so we're recommending that you approve this budget amendment so that we can get Mike a decent vehicle for him to use in the performance of his duties.
Make a motion, we do that, Mayor.
Before that, any discussion? Anybody?
What kind of vehicle are we getting?
It will be some sort of a, Lori help me, like a pickup, a light-duty pickup truck.
Does he have one, a
It'd be
vehicle?
nice to have an electric car, but I guess that's too much, right?
I don't think Mike's an electric car guy, but
Does he have a vehicle now he's using?
he does not.
Okay.
We're reimbursing him for his private. We'll make that suggestion, Councilman, see how
Okay.
that goes.
Any further discussion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, the next item pertains to the USDA loan and grant that you approved at your last meeting for the purchase of the police vehicles and the mobile command vehicle for the fire department. And just as Dennis said earlier, sometimes you're required to contribute funding to the project. You remember that Monica Thornton said that our application required the town to contribute $1,230 towards the project. So in order to move forward with the loan closing, we have to show evidence of that. And so Virginia has prepared a budget amendment transferring money from the operating costs of the fire department budget and the police department budget into the small capital projects budget ordinance where this loan and grant will be run through. So if you approve this budget amendment tonight, then Virginia can issue a PO and show that to Monica tomorrow to keep the process moving.
Great. So moved. Any discussion? We got a motion, need a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And Mayor, this is USDA night, so tonight we have on the agenda a budget amendment to fund the first annual debt service payment for the USDA water treatment plant loan. That debt service payment is due June 1st, and because of timing issues, we anticipated that the debt service first payment was going to be made in next fiscal year, but we need to make adjustments for that. The council, when they adopted the budget in 2019, did approve funding, or did approve a portion of a rate increase that funded $49,000 of the debt service payment, and so we're showing another transfer of funds into that account from additional revenue that we've received from sale of merchandise. So we're asking for approval for a budget amendment of $57,054 for the first debt service payment. And I do want to point out that going forward, in future years, we're going to be paying more than the minimum. That was part of our forecast, because we don't want a 40-year note. We want a 25 or a 30-year note. So next, you'll see in the budget that we present to you for 2021 a higher amount of debt service payment.
So next year the payment will be due July 1 or June?
June 1.
Okay. Does that mess you up some?
No, it's
Okay.
just the first year messed me up.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm gonna ask for a budget amendment to buy a mobile camera. If we're gonna be in this meeting mode much longer. So the next item is a resolution. We have talked when you've met electronically, remotely, about whether or not you felt there was the need, the desire for the council to consider adopting a resolution urging the governor to consider, as part of his phase-in reopening plan, a regional approach. Right now, his plan is based on statewide metrics, and there's been some discussion as to whether or not we should urge that the metrics be looked at regionally. Some of the counties have adopted resolutions asking or demanding that the governor give each county the authority to make that decision. The resolution that I drafted, and it's up to you if you even want to consider the resolution, but would call for a regional approach, to ask him to consider a regional approach.
Was that a Sedgwick County area in the northeast?
The northeast region.
And the resolution is just simply asking the governor to consider that, looking at our regional metrics, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you want to ask Hood for any comments on that, or does anybody have any comments?
That's a question. If, let's say the governor immediately says, okay, I'm gonna do that for you, who determines, if the region's given the determination of what opens and what stays closed, who's involved in that?
It would likely be the health director. You know, we would want it to be for the Albemarle Regional Health Services, the counties that the health director oversees, and the county managers, the county commissioners, and I would hope they would include, you know, the mayors and the managers. So the regional elected officials and support staff.
And, there's a big difference between your resolution and the county's resolution in many ways. You don't deal with churches, for example, and the county does. And the county's asking for the governor to rescind an order. You're asking for regional ability to make decisions on a regional basis. Who gets the power to decide whether we follow a county's version of a resolution or a town's version?
That's a good question. And we've had kind of sidewalk discussions about that. You know, does the county, when they have a declared state of emergency, does that include the town of Edenton? And we have always operated under kind of an agreement. And Hood will have to help me with this if he can, but that if the town had a state of emergency, that is the town. And the county had a state of emergency, that encounters outside of the city limits. Now, Hood, I don't know legally if that would be, you know, if that's the right legal interpretation, but that is the way that we've always operated. And luckily, we've always had a really good relationship with the county, and we've done our declarations together. So Hood, are you prepared to chime in on that?
No, ma'am. I don't, you know, again, the town's part of the county, so I mean, I don't know. It's been the gentleman's agreement, you know, maybe that's how it's worked. You also have your interlocal agreements, and I don't know whether any of those are impacted by it, but, you know, I guess history, if that's the way we've done it historically, then I don't know why it wouldn't continue forward until somebody changes it.
Well, part of my concern is, you know, the governor will come out around the 22nd to maybe phase 2 around the 22nd of May. by the time this gets to the governor and if he takes action on it and sends it out to regional response, you couldn't do that probably by May 22nd. I think it's a good statement. I think it supports the businesses, and maybe that's the value of it. We're saying we support our businesses, but it seems to be more of a statement of support rather than a realistic document that's going to lead to any action.
Anne-Marie, do you think, I'm sure they are, our regional health directors are coordinating with the director of the Division of Health Services, Manny Cohen? Are they getting together?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'm just.
They are.
She does a
They're
great
all
job.
on the
She
same
does
page.
a great job.
I like her a lot.
So, and she has a lot of influence, of course, with the governor.
So do we have any further comments about the resolution to support the regional phase and reopening North Carolina?
I've got a few, Mayor Stallings. I agree somewhat with Councilman Coleman that we may not be able to move quick enough to have any of this have any effect by the next governor's executive order. I'm not sure if the governor would even listen to us, but I do think it's important for us to support our businessmen, the businessmen that have been speaking to me. And at the same time, I do like the way that Anne-Marie has worded this, because I think it's worded much more balanced than some of the other ones that we have received. And we've been asked all along to make our decisions based on the metrics. And I think this focuses on the metrics that are different for Chowan County, thankfully, than a lot of the areas in the country and a lot of the areas in the state. So I would be in favor of it as written, fully knowing that it might not have much of an effect. And many times we pass resolutions that are somewhat ceremonial in nature as a show of support.
Is that a motion?
So moved, I'll move to.
One more question I have.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to add one more whereas to the resolution, if I might, just for consideration. I think we're being supportive of the business community is extremely important. I think we could easily add in there some sort of recognition that many people have chronic health problems, are older, and that we need to also be committed to looking after these people and caring about our community at the same time we're supporting our businesses. And I think just a statement in there that recognizes that we also have a commitment to caring for the more vulnerable people in our community. To be put in there without taking away from the business part of it.
And having made the motion, I have no objection to his request that the
So
motion be amended.
So you're saying those are the long-term care facilities?
Yeah, I've got a little piece there.
Okay. All right, good.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Can
Anne-Marie?
I say something to the boss lady?
Yes, ma'am.
I think you did an excellent job in the draft that you wrote.
I agree.
Very
It
good.
reads
Yes,
good
indeed.
and it gets
Very good.
directly to the point.
Yep.
Thank you.
But is anybody surprised?
No.
No.
I hope the governor listens to you.
Councilman Bond, I was out of pocket on Friday, but I did text Anne-Marie and let her know I trusted her to word it correctly and balanced, and that's exactly what she did.
Yeah,
So
she did.
I join in your thank you.
Okay, now we have our attorney, Hood Ellis, is with us tonight via Zoom, and we've welcomed him before. So we need to take action on the council's electronic meeting policy. And Hood, if you will, take over that and lead us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All we're doing in this F and G is we're rescinding the earlier resolution we adopted in April and replacing it with one that's now been updated. What happened between our April meeting and today is that the General Assembly met They adopted special legislation which covered remote meetings and set forth the rules and regulations that apply statewide during a state-declared emergency. And all we're doing is, again, we had sort of come up with our own plan as best we could, and now we've got a state plan that's codified into law, so we're replacing our plan with the state plan, so we'll be in compliance with the General Assembly's rules and regulations for remote meetings.
Okay.
And Mayor Stallings and Hood, can items F and G be in the form of one motion, or do they need to be separated?
I think one motion would be very appropriate, to rescind one and replace it with the other.
Okay, all right,
And I would so move that, Mayor Stallings.
okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Hood, we appreciate your time and effort on
Yes,
this.
sir.
Okay, and this time we're down to where items considered timely and important. Anybody up here have anything that they want to discuss with with the rest of us? Now would be the time.
I got one thing. I want to just say that I think that the staff, Anne Marie and everybody done a great job of thinking creatively during this pandemic. I've also been especially grateful for the leadership that Jennifer Harris has given us with Destination Downtown, but this is a terrible time for people that don't get checks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely different event. People that don't have a paycheck come in, and these downtown merchants have had their livelihood just basically ripped out from under them. And there's been a whole lot of generosity in the community. They've been able to give out those checks from Destination Downtown, and I think that it's just been a great sign of how strong our community is. And Anne Marie's done a great job of supporting Jennifer, and I'm very hopeful that as we move forward, that our town recovers.
The general pulling together.
Yeah.
Well, Jennifer and Anne Marie have worked together extensively on this, and they've done a great job. We've got two great leaders, how about that?
We do.
And thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything to bring before us today?
I think the stores that is open, have been open, I think they've done a good job of putting markers in the aisles, which way to go and how you go. I know, Food Line, you go in one way, you gotta come out another.
Yeah.
So I really laughed because a lot of people here to me, we tried to cut across, you couldn't, they had to come back and go the other way. There's only one way that you can go. But I think the people have been responding to these rules real good. Most of everybody go by it.
Yeah. And the restaurants have been getting a lot of support too, to take out and delivering.
I noticed they're very appreciative, the restaurants, for the takeout orders.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, we appreciate you coming back.
Yeah. They've
Very
done a very good job, all of them have, I think, so, anyway. Anyone else up here have anything?
I'm thankful to see everyone.
Yeah.
I miss y'all.
Well, Anne Marie and I talked about this last week, about how we could do this, and she came up with this plan of how to do it and everything, and she's done a great job of it.
No, Tammy and Bud came up with the plan.
Tammy and Bud.
Yeah.
Please thank them
Yeah.
for us.
I like it. Maybe we just
This is the way to do it.
Yes, out here in the middle. Room for all of our goodies.
And I don't guess we have any public with
Well,
us.
you might, Mayor, thank you for reminding me.
Any public input, somebody
Hang on
out
one
there
second.
that wants to,
I need to unmute everybody. Is your shut? Okay, great. Is there anybody on the line, any member of the public who wishes to make a comment to the council? I think you're good, Mayor.
if not, that ends our council meeting, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moving.
Second?
Second.
All right. Motion adjourned.
I'll second.
You had quite a month.